it's live. Okay, let's go. Thanks. Peace, everybody. I just wanted to first say good night. What's up? Pacific, East Coast, West Coast time. You know, it's a little bit earlier. And I just wanted to give you some of my thoughts on what's happening with R. Kelly, but in general, I think where we are as women, and particularly women of color right now, and muting, canceling, saying goodbye to all sexual abusers, predators, pedophiles, all of that in our lives, right? So I kind of wanted to start first. I always like to give, especially younger people who've written about this for a long time. So I picked up today Joan Morgan, When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. And man, aren't they coming home to roost finally for so many abusive men in our lives, whether they're in our family, in our workplace, you know, whether they've been our friends, our comrades, and no longer that, and, you know, just in general. Let me just start with something that Joan wrote in this book. She said, interestingly enough, we do not imitate our mothers at their weakest or most vulnerable, shedding silent midnight tears alone and afraid, that we don't until much later when we are fully grown, occasionally tripping and oblivious to our behavior's origins. It took years to realize that the same process was true of my feminism. For a very long time, I was a black woman, completely unaware that I faced the world in my mother's clothes. So this is, again, Joan Morgan, When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost. It's been a re-edition of that. And I'm just, give me a second, because I also want to try to do this on Instagram, you know, because I want to definitely just try to reach out to as many people in this. So just bear with me real quick, y'all. Okay. All right. So like I was saying for everybody on Instagram Live, When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost, a hip-hop feminist breaks it down. Joan Morgan wrote this, and there's been she has reissued it, and it's out. So I hope people pick this up, and her new book coming out on Lauryn Hill. So today, basically what I want to talk about was R. Kelly, right? Well, not just R. Kelly, but what R. Kelly means, and the victory that we're about to have against him and all his handlers and people that have been complicit with him for over almost 25 years, okay? It's been that long. So first, I just want to say my name is Rosa Clemente. I'm a hip-hop baby born in the Bronx, 1972. I just turned 46, so, you know, I've been, and I am part of the hip-hop generation. And I want to really couch this within the hip-hop generation of my peers and what it means for younger people now to envision a world where one day they will look at these things and ask us, what were we doing and why was this happening? So I want to start first by saying just a little bit about my personal experience. I grew up in the Bronx, right? And I grew up in a time where there was much upheaval. You know, my parents were Puerto Rican migrants. They had worked hard. We were living in a pretty decent part of the Bronx, I guess, East Tremont and Harrison, you know, and I was sexually abused when I was 6 years old, right? I told some people that, but this is the first time I'm really sharing it with people. And today I was talking to my husband, and I said, his name is Justice, I was like, there's a reason I don't like the color yellow. And for all these years, I just thought I didn't like this color because of my skin tone, or I just don't like yellow for whatever reason. And what I have begun to realize all these years after that abuse happened to me was that the reason I don't like the color yellow is because the first time this person in my building who was trusted abused me, I was wearing a yellow dress, right? So I thought about that today and how memories stick with you, right? That was 41 years ago when this man first started sexually abusing me. I was young. All of that has informed probably every interaction with every man in my entire life. But as well, it has informed how I relate to people, the anger I have for many years against people, how I would just go off on them and blame it on, being Puerto Rican or being from the Bronx. Like, all this stuff stays with you. And then you get to a point, I think, when you've been abused, that you just compartmentalize. You might remember it, but sometimes you just got to keep it moving and you put it away. But it never goes away. So that experience of being prey, right, informed how I even related to other women in my family, other women in my life. And in a very crazy way, what ends up happening is that you also, as a woman, become conditioned to carry out animosity towards other women, right? Now, a lot of this I probably learned inside of, just figuring out myself as a person. Some of it through some type of therapy I've had here and there. But most of it really, has come in the last decade for me. And part of that was women in hip hop talking about feminism, talking about what was going on in the culture, going to conferences, discoursing, engaging, reading our history of women in the Young Lords Party, the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, and how they confronted sexism and misogyny straight up, right? So when I became what was known as a hip-hop activist, one of the first articles I wrote was about Russell Simmons not being hip-hop. And then I talk about how he's talking about he was making his clothes in sweatshops and all this kind of stuff. But really, I never even addressed then in that article about how he was abusive towards women and what the rumors were in the culture. And then as I found a political home in hip-hop, I now realize that there were moments that I should have even stepped up more for sisters. Like, how many times was I backstage and was around all men and all, like, these, hip-hop glitterati cats, whether they were the MCs, the DJs, the breakers, the graph artists, the journalists, the public intellectuals, right? And how many times did I not see a woman's pain or see how women were treated, or how many times was I complicit because I was the one woman around or one of the few women around? I had to come to realization with that. And all of this, not enlightenment, but me finally figuring out a lot of things in my life really happened after I was 40. And I'm letting people know that because, especially for younger people out there organizing, especially if you didn't grow up in an organizing or movement household, it can take you 30 years to really decolonize your mind, to really say, as a woman, I've acted patriarchally, I've been complicit, I've let mad dudes get passes. And for what? At the expense of my dignity, my integrity, and all of that. We have to say that, right? We have to, as especially people around movement and social justice, we have to consistently be evolving. We have to consistently be checking in with ourselves and our comrades and saying, what am I not doing right? What do I need to be better? We need to be asking young people, how am I stagnant? Where am I moving? How am I moving? So I lay that out as a very personal example of how I think we should be if we're going to say we're about social justice, racial justice, gender justice, economic justice, and all of that. The last year has brought about an enormous awareness of the work that has been happening for over 20 years. For over 30 years, 40 years, forever how long, particularly women of color, African descendant women, indigenous women, have been resisting and fighting not only patriarchy, but white supremacy, capitalism, imperialism, militarism, and all of that. And how in any space we've been in, we've always checked, particularly men or those that identify as men. We've been doing that work. But there's now a moment of clarity. And maybe 45 being elected is the moment of clarity when we're going to say enough is enough. We're going to say no matter what the consequences, no matter the hate I get, no matter the threats that we get as women who speak out, especially within hip hop and R&B and basically the music industrial complex world, right? We are not going to live and let our grandchildren inherit a world where they are preyed upon, where they live in a world where they're more than half the young girls of color by the time they're 18. And these are who report, not even those who don't report, but those who will report, right? That half those girls will be abused. That we're not going to accept a world where we're sending our girls to college and 1 in 3 might be raped. That we're not going to accept that world anymore. And the last 3 years in the movement world, to see a younger generation of unapologetic black, brown, queer folks from Ferguson to Florida to Puerto Rico to Brazil to Jackson, Mississippi, you know, and everywhere we struggle, Chicago, to see a new generation of unapologetic, particularly women, girls, my daughter's age 13, you know, it's an incredible moment, and we have to seize the time that we're in. And in seizing that time, it is incumbent right now that we as black and brown women, those that identify as black and brown, those that are against white supremacy and that are also against anti-blackness and are about the values of humanity, but also that will no longer allow for us to be silenced, marginalized, abused, or preyed on. That we unify. We don't have to all have the same way of getting to the win, but we all have to unify at this moment. Because for too long, especially from the hip-hop generation, we have let too many men slide. R. Kelly is one of the most egregious examples that we have seen. A 25-year career of being a predator and getting paid and being given a platform to do so. 25 years. But we can also say Russell Simmons, we can say Fabulous, we can say Rick Ross, we could say Too Short, we could say how many MCs, how many DJs, how many graffiti artists, how many breakdancers, like how many journalists, how many so-called public intellectuals out there going on college campuses trying to push up on 18-year-old girls, and we know who they are. Like how many? And then how much is enough? We could go back to Dr. Dre and what he did, And we can go all the way right now to what Kodak Black did, and we can go all right now to what Khalees is telling us Nas did to her. And it's hard to, for some people to accept it, except for many of us who've been abused. This is not something we're not immune to knowing is happening. And we have to name these names, because all of them at some level still have a career. And do I want somebody's career to end if they're a sexual predator? You bet I do. Yes, I do. Do I want somebody to not be able to have any type of public life if they're a sexual predator? Yes, I do. Definitely. Because I don't want any of those people around any of our girls. I don't want them. So everything is coming together. But in all coming together, I also believe that we have to be very clear on not erasing who fought to bring this to where we're at right now, particularly with R. Kelly. But look, my sister Tarana Burke has been putting in work for 20 years, and in fact, she's been the reason many of us speak out. She's been the reason many of us have spoken out, right? But so many sisters from my generation have been doing phenomenal work at the expense of their livelihoods, their careers. I said last week, I was sitting at home with my husband. I just, the R. Kelly stuff was kind of brewing. And I said, when R. Kelly's finally taken down, it won't be because of white women, white feminists, black men, or any men. It will be because of black women, many who will never be named. But some of us know the truth, and we won't allow our sisters' efforts for over 15 years to be erased. That tweet, I actually tweeted that out last week, because I felt something was shifting and moving around this. And I said, if we could finally bring this dude down, it will set the precedent that no man can get away with this behavior. Whether you're a chair of a department in some college, or whether you're the manager at Kentucky Fried Chicken, no man is going to be allowed to get away with this behavior anymore without dealing with the consequences. And as one of my comrades, Kwabana, just said, the walls are closing in on misogyny, vulgarity, and violence. And it is. So today, I was so happy to, see that Time's Up specifically spoke to this issue, issued the statement on women of color. And I knew that Tarana and other women of color within Time's Up were ready to push forward the work of people like Tarana and other sisters that I'm going to shout out for sure. And they said that the 4 things that we're asking for right now to mute R. Kelly are: the music label RCA has to stop their contract with him and distributing his music. That Ticketmaster right now is selling tickets to his show on May 11th in Greensboro, North Carolina. We have to make sure that we support all the organizers in Greensboro, North Carolina right now who are going to shut it down, and that this concert will not be allowed to go on. That Spotify and Apple Music pull his entire catalog. And that the venue that is hosting the R. Kelly concert on May 11th, the Greensboro Coliseum Complex, finds it so untenable because so many of us around the country will say this is unacceptable. And like I said, I wanted to shout out so many of the women, and I don't mean to pull anyone out. And let me say this, when I say pull your catalog, Your music may play, whatever, but if I'm going to support and pay Spotify or Apple Music or buy any of your products, I don't want someone who has a 25-year history of being a serial sexual predator is what it is, right? And actually, if y'all want, go to voxmedia.com and check out this timeline right here. It's 24 years, look, in a timeline. Right here. Timeline. Check that out. But women like Tarana Burke, Dream Hampton, Tony Blackman, April Silver, Asha Bandelli, Elizabeth Mendez-Berry, Rachel Ramis, Joan Morgan, Sophia Quintero, Aisha Simmons, Salamisha Tillett, Jamila Lemieux, Luz Marquez, Lori Robinson, Black Women's Blueprint, Monifa Bandelli. Like, these are women of my generation. A couple of them are a little younger, for sure. But we've been talking about this. We've been organizing around it. And the time is here now. And earlier today, his team released a statement. And I said that statement reads exactly what a degenerate sexual predator would say to save his career. And that is over for you. Almost 2 decades, but it's a wrap. May all the women whose lives you destroy find justice. And may all the sisters right now who have not told their story start telling your story. There's nothing to be ashamed of. You did nothing wrong. Tell it in your time, in your way, through the best way you know how. And especially to the hip-hop sisters. Break it out, graph it out, write it out, DJ it out, rhyme it out. Tell your story. We all need to tell our stories. And to all the brothers right now who sound ridiculous, stupid, complicit, talking about why Bill Cosby or why R. Kelly and why not Harvey Weinstein or Kevin Spacey, I ask you to ask yourselves, when did being pro-black include supporting rapists and abusers? We see you, we know who you are. We see you by not commentating today and having our backs. We see you because we know some of y'all and I'm about to cut y'all off. And y'all will figure it out. And we see you because we've been talking to you and having conversations at panels, conferences, convenings, churches, on the street, on TV shows, debates, all of that for over 20 years. 20 to 25 years. We see you. So today, particularly black and brown men, you either stand with us or you're against us. You have to make a choice. You're with us or you're against us. You're with us or you're complicit. And I'm talking about all the men. MCs, DJs, those with visibility, websites, radio, TV shows, podcasts. We see you not talking out, not speaking out. Right? And then we see you always on some pro-black, pro-brown, pro-empowerment. But what you're really talking about is yourselves. You're really upholding patriarchy in the culture. Right? So either you stand up, and not because you have a wife and now you have a daughter and now you have your mother and your grandmother, because it's the right and humane thing to do. And also, if you want to talk business, we're not supporting y'all anymore. And it's very easy for all of us to figure out a list of who not to support. And I shouted out some of these people, and that includes Africa Bambaataa, and that includes KRS-One, who supports Africa Bambaataa. And if people don't know, you can look at other stuff that we've been doing for two years before this around Africa Bambaataa. You could see what we did, like I said, around Too Short. You could see what we did around Rick Ross. But the time right now is here. So, of course, time is up. Time's been up for a long time. I think now it's just that a new generation has pushed us beyond what we thought we needed to do and we needed to address. So, like I said before, I want one day my grandchildren to sit with me and my husband, right, and say, who is that? Like, why was this happening? How did y'all let that happen? And what did you do to stop it? What did we do to stop it? You know? And what about all the women he may still have locked up? That's just him. But I also implore people to look at all these other abusers and predators, right? I implore people within hip-hop to unfortunately let go of what you thought a legend was. I'm going to tell you, to me, what a legend is. A legend is an Ida B. Wells and a Fannie Lou Hamer and a Lolita LeBron and an Assata Shakur, right? A legend to me is a Kimberly Crenshaw and an Eve Ensler. You know, a legend to me, to my daughter, is going to be people like Tarana and Joan and Dream and Asha and Nyoka and Madi and J-Love and Dana and all the amazing women who have helped me personally on my journey, but who collectively we've helped each other. My sister, my niece, you know? May our younger children never have to experience this. May they never have to make a video like this. Peace, everybody.